Check, 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 check the microphone.
Checkity check.
Checkity, checkity, check. Microphone checker. All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Moxie in the East Village. I want to hear some ambience out there. Who's in the audience? Give it up. What's up, everybody? I'm Simon Retner from the Checkout from WBGO. Can we get some South Indian agnostic jazz music in the house?
I think that's us, yeah. Agnostic jazz, yeah.
Well, as soon you'll learn that's a gross oversimplification of the sound that the drummer Sarathy Korwar will be presenting today with his band at the Bowers and Wilkins Sound Lounge at New York City's Winter Jazz Festival. Here arriving aplenty and with an explanation point, please welcome the drummer, the composer, and his four-piece band.
Mango writes something, and white mango, I don't know. Maybe this needs a symbol to represent the exotic, something like a mango. Mango into bar, and bar mango, wide along mango. Snap pole, which racist do you want on your banknote? They give you the default sitar solo, aka Indian banjo. Election time, gotta hang low. This guy's telling me to go back home. Type NW2, what does your sat-nav show? Are you indigenous though? Are you indigenous though? If not, you better be vigilant, bro. Or what? I think that I'm invisible, no. I think that I'm a mythical creature. Like working class black, working class brown. We don't seem to have any worth in your towns. I know in the old days everything was okay. I saw it in a documentary called Mary Poppins. Supercalifragilistic, expiali mango. Mr. Englishman, which part of England do you grow them leaves that make your famous English breakfast tea? English like a cheeky Nando's. English like cutting through your country as if it were a mango. When they come to hear us, people in power go seem to cut their ear off. Like Van Gogh or Van Gogh. Power corrupts. You already killed Duncan, you might as well kill Banquo. Scaramouche, Scaramouche, will you do the fandango? Are you gonna bang, are you gonna bang though? No. Islamism is the new communism. Time to reboot Rambo. Skies are grey, today they won't have drones. Today they still have homes. Nah, I need to have a word with the Espirito Santo. The meaning of life, gotta be more than a series of portmanteaus. Jabberwocky, never straight, negro y blanco. I hold a baby in my arms. She don't weigh much more than a box of mangoes. She smiles. I have love. I have hope. I have life. And I will fight for days and nights that taste sweeter than.
Sarathy Korwar and his band in studio, presenting the other side of jazz right here at the Winter Jazz Festival. You know, that's the motto that we have here on this program, focusing on jazz in its most plural forms. Sarathy, you felt like the other, I take it, from time to time.
Yeah, I think the othering is something that I've gotten sort of good at telling when it's happening. I feel like I'm more aware of when I get called the other. And sometimes it happens and I still don't notice it, but I'm getting better at it.
Excellent. Well, for those that don't know, Sarathy was pretty much born and raised in India, but then came to musical plurality, shall we say, in the UK. But you were actually born in the States, which is kind of funny. Lived here for 3 years. So this is, in a strange way, a strange homecoming for you.
I guess so. I mean, it doesn't really, like you say, it doesn't really feel like a homecoming because I didn't really spend any crucial time here in the States. But I was born here. I was born in Maryland, and I was here until I was 2.5, 3. And my parents basically moved back to India, which, you know, confused a lot of people at the time. Once you've lived the immigrant dream, you've made that step and gone abroad, why would you decide to move back? And I think that was a really bold move by them in the 90s. And I mean, I'm really pleased they made that move because I grew up in India and I had a great time growing up there.
The composition we just heard was called Mango and featured your vocalist Zia Ahmed, which addresses this sort of notion of the otherness, which really came into play when you were in the UK. That wasn't happening in India.
No, like in India, I lived a very privileged existence, right? I'm like upper middle class, Hindu, upper class, upper caste. Really, only when I came to the UK did all that privilege just kind of wash away instantly. And it took a while to like understand the kind of dynamics of where my place in this new society was.
All right, so just take us to the moment in the UK where you were like, wow, I'm a brown child. Like, was there a moment or was it a series of events that...
Yeah, it was a series of events. It wasn't like one moment, but I'm like, oh, I'm a minority. That's not how it works. I think for a lot of people,
Exactly.
like, you realize the kind of layers of discrimination and layers of, like, privilege that you don't have access to over time, you know. And it took me a long time, and I'm still kind of learning, really, how that, how my privilege or lack of it kind of plays into the conversation of me being a musician and me just being a human being in London.
So take us to a specific lyric of the song Mango and unpack it for us. And what are you trying to say in it?
I mean, the lyrics are really Zia Ahmed, so he would probably be the best person to talk to about all this.
Okay.
But some of my favorite lyrics in the song are, man walks into bar and barman goes, why the long mango? And all the wordplay for me is really fun. And I think what gets lost a lot of times when we're having these conversations about race and minorities is like the humor and the idea that it can be self-deprecating. It can be like, you can be having a laugh and, it's an empowering feeling to be able to like be sarcastic about it. And like, the English can cut through your country as if it were a mango. That's another good lyric that I like. Supercalifragilisticexpiali mango. There's loads. I can go on. I mean, it's a great song, and it's, Zia. I heard him perform this song on YouTube, and I kind of hit him up and said I'd love to kind of put this to music. And that's how it came about. That's how we met, and that's how he's been involved in this project. So shout out to Zia.
So what's the next song you're going to share with us?
The next song we're going to do is a song called Mumbai, which is a combination of Bombay and Mumbai, the same city which is known by two different names. For me, the song is about this idea of the city. Bombay being the old colonial word for the British colonial word for the city, and Mumbai being the more, well, quote-unquote Indian name for the city, which is also driven by a very kind of right-wing nationalist agenda. So it's about being caught between like a colonial past and evangelist right-wing future. And not really subscribing to either of those views.
You're feeling other again.
Well, not other as much
Well,
as
you're
like you're trying to
separate from both,
define,
right?
You're trying to define the city that you love in the way on your own terms, really, and not like just because you don't buy into either of those narratives, you don't have to be another, in a sense. And like there's a lot of people who feel like me, so there's no othering, and that's what the song's about. That's what the lyrics are about, and yeah.
Let's hear it.
Cool. देखा गली तो सीखा तरीका 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 देखा गली तो सीखा तरीका
Right, give it up. Sarathy Korwar here at Winter Jazzfest on the checkout from WBGO here at the Bowers and Wilkins Sound Lounge in New York City at Winter Jazzfest. So your musical rise is an extremely interesting, almost, I hate to say case study, but that was the word that came to mind. But it's more important and interesting how you've actually navigated it and responded to it. In 2016, you made your auspicious debut with Day by Day, which essentially put you on the global map and getting picked up by all the hot musical agents in the UK. And then followed that up with My East is Your West in 2018. But what's so fascinating about this project, More Arriving, is from what I've read, it seems like you've kind of lost control of the narrative of your own identity.
I feel like it's more just taking control of your own narrative, really.
Well, that's what I mean, like reclaiming it. That
Yeah,
an
absolutely.
acknowledgement and then exactly a reclamation, a reclaiming.
Yeah, I think for a long time, like once you start making music, you realize how much of the music that you make gets talked about the way you want to, or the way people want to see your music as being perceived, basically. And I think the longer you're in this business, you realize that the best way to kind of handle all this is to basically shape your own narrative as much as possible.
So
you
just
know?
in a quick summary and synopsis so people aren't familiar, just take us through that journey and how and what happened.
I mean, it's not any one thing again that happened as such, but it's questions like, like how does the music get categorized? Is it jazz? Is it Indian music? Is it Indian classical music? What are the influences in it? I mean, is it jazz enough because I'm a brown dude playing jazz? Is it jazz? All these questions get thrown up, and especially when we're doing gigs, often you'd see like tour posters of like me under like a banyan tree or on a carpet or something, and like I was never subscribing to that worldview of who I am, but that's what gets a very sort of lazy depiction of what I am. I think there's very little understanding of what like contemporary Indian music can sound like. For example, like the biggest kind of independent music in India right now is hip hop, but how many people think of Indian music and think about hip hop? Right? I don't think anyone does, at least from the outside. So it's that kind of understanding of what like modern Indian music can sound like, and that's what I keep talking about. I keep talking about more arriving as a modern brown record. And then I kind of talk about the politics behind the music, and I talk about what the influences that my music, what influences my music, but I never really talk about what genre it is, because I mean, I don't know what genre it is really, and that's not really my job. My job's to make music.
And the unfortunate experiences that you've had about being felt reduced to a monolith in the UK jazz touring circuit, and people imposing words like spiritual jazz,
Right.
which was the sort of the joke I made at the top of
Yeah,
the show.
yeah.
And kind of like
Yeah, that's quite funny. I think like it's an interesting one. I haven't heard that before, like agnostic jazz. But I mean, if agnostic comes as a reaction to spiritual, it's an interesting idea, because like I've never talked about my own music as being spiritual in some way, but that's the first tag that you get when you start playing jazz as an Indian is spiritual jazz, And I'm not saying that I don't subscribe to ideas of spirituality, but like I almost stay away from them because I know that as soon as I start saying the word spiritual, it's going to just kind of completely go out of control.
well, not only that, but you also bring in the picture that almost that subgenre itself, spiritual jazz, almost has like racist connotations.
Well, I wouldn't say. I mean, it's a complicated subject, and I think like my second album, My East Is Your West, kind of dealt with that idea of sort of like exoticizing the East and treating the East, quote unquote, the East as a repository of knowledge, where you could just dip in and out, learn a couple scales, go there and learn a couple of grooves, and then go about your business as usual, and without really understanding that there's a whole tradition of music that's associated with a lot of this kind of these scales that you're learning or whatever. And I think like everyone is kind of guilty of that to an extent. Like all my favorite like spiritual jazz heroes like Alice Coltrane and Joe Henderson and Don Cherry and Pharoah Sanders, all these people, like I love them, but also like I find their music kind of deeply problematic in some ways.
Yeah, it's sort of like how what I assume it would be an interesting comparison is sort of, how Brazilians think listening to Stan Getz and João Gilberto with those commercial recordings, and that's their vision of what bossa nova is.
I mean, if everybody in the US thinks that's what bossa nova is, then that's problematic,
which is not bossa nova.
Sure. Yeah, it's the same thing, basically. I think like that's what representation is always about, like whether it's in music or anything else. It's about if there's enough people making bossa nova, and then you put a record out with Stan Getz doing bossa nova, that's fine, because then people have enough sort of frames of reference. But if that's your only frame of reference, then it's problematic. And that's the same thing with Indian music.
So let's, in effort to extend and celebrate the plurality of Indian music, north, south, east, west. I mean, India is a massive country, and how many languages are spoken there? Like hundreds, right?
Well, I mean, there's lots of dialects. I mean, there's probably about 28, 30 languages, and then...
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, but you do such a great job of offering the message of plurality. And for those that don't subscribe to the Checkout as a podcast, the podcast version is going to feature sort of a mixed, stripped-down, edited version of the journey that Sarathy Korwar is about to give us, guiding us with his music from more arriving and the different rappers that he's taken and the different visions that they present on the record. And I'd like you just to give us that journey right now.
I think the record is really about like presenting an idea that there isn't one single brown voice, like there isn't one South Asian voice that speaks for everyone. I think a lot of people from the outside don't understand that me being, say, for example, me, a first-generation immigrant to the UK, is very different from somebody who's a third generation.
So let's get specific then. Let's go straight to MC Mawai. Sorry, Malala.
Mawali.
Mawali. Sorry, yeah. Exactly. Let's just go straight to his story first.
Right. Well, his story is he's from Mumbai. He's from Mumbai. He grew up there, lives there, and his like relationship to being brown is very different from mine. As opposed to somebody, for example, on the track Coolie, there's a person called Delhi Sultanate who's on the record who kind of raps in a Jamaican kind of patois accent because he's grown up in Jamaica, but he's Indian.
So let's go straight to the Jamaican track then.
Okay, cool.
So tell us about this
that track is called Coolie, and it's about the kind of trade of indentured laborers from India to Jamaica who went to work on like sugar plantations and actually carried the first like cannabis seeds from India to Jamaica. And the whole idea is about diasporic communities based in the Caribbean who are also subscribed to some version of being South Asian, and again, it all plays into this idea that there is no like one South Asian voice, and there are all these like different communities of people who are very different, but also maybe share a certain kind of similarity somewhere.
All right. What's the next song you're going to share with us?
Next song is, funnily enough, is Coolie. So we're going to play that. Yeah.
All right. Let's hear it. right, give it up. Cooley, Sarathy Korwar and his band in our studio, featured here at the Bowers and Wilkins Sound Lounge in New York City's, well, at New York City for Winter Jazz Fest here on the Checkout from WBGO. Go to checkoutjazz.org and watch this video right here. And if you can't, well, those that you can't see, you guys are all wearing jerseys. And so there must be a story behind that.
Well, I just made these jerseys because I love them. And shout out to Lefto, who originally made these jerseys. I don't know who originally made them, but I saw them by a guy called Lefto. And they say fly immigrants instead of fly Emirates. And they're football kits because I love football, soccer, whatever. And so we all wear them because, yeah, we feel like a team. That's it. And it says more arriving, fly immigrants. That's what we like.
The last tune we just heard was called Cooley from your new recording, More Arriving. The first section of that song, it has, you know, all of that space for interplay. And to me, it sort of symbolically represents, at least stylistically speaking, sort of the beginning of when jazz really began to marry with Indian music in rich ways, right? Like I can hear Zakir Hussein's tabla solo in that first section.
Right. Well, for me, the song is based around the riff, and the melody is based around this idea of wedding bands in India. There are a lot of like brass bands in India playing for weddings, and I always loved that sound growing up. And the riff, the melody that's on the song is kind of something that I imagine them to be playing. So it's in a way, it's this kind of like New Orleans meets Punjabi kind of swing type
That's
vibe.
right.
Yeah, and that's where I think the first time I heard horns in a way was in wedding bands, in India, and so that's my kind of initial reference anyway.
And for those that don't know, you are like classically trained in the tabla tradition. I love how you just put those away behind the curtain. You're like, nah, we're not going to be playing those today.
I feel like, I do play them quite often. It's just they're not the easiest instrument to carry around with you. And
they get out of tune real fast,
That's
too.
true. That's right as well. But, I feel like this project, I want to be heard on drums more than anything else. And so, yeah, that's why no tabla on this one. But I love playing tabla. And yeah, like you say, I'm classically trained. And yeah, it's kind of the first instrument that I learned to play. And then I moved on to the drum kit. So, yeah.
Beautiful. What's the next song? I just want to give a quick shout out to this amazing band.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pawan Benjamin on the saxophone. Let's hear it.
Hear it.
Al McSween on the keys. And Zia Ahmed is joining us again to spit some rhymes, maybe not so rhymes. What are you about to perform for us?
We're gonna do a song called Bowl, which is also on the record, More Arriving, and you'll figure it out. You'll see what it's about once we start playing it.
Beautiful.
running like thoughts, running from thoughts, rattling from the constant battling, broken pieces, floating tokens, token gestures, token jester, open sesame, Alibaba, 40 thieves, 40 grievances, nothing to pledge allegiance with, trapped in a box, ballerina chopped off, in place of Bhangra man, dance, monkey dance, to the music of the snake charmer, I am karma, I am Kama Sutra, I am it the honey, hoye muttaya, the mundaya, the bachke rahi. I am your gap year. You said you were lost. I hope you found yourself. I'm Slumdog Millionaire, Downward Dog, 8-headed God. I am Shiva, Al Qaeda. I am auditioning for the role of Terrorist 1. Yeah, I can do that in an Arabic accent. I am Ganges, I am Gandhi, I am Jinnah, I am 5 pillars, I am Sinner, I am Cinnamon, I am Cardamom, I am not invited to the Houses of Parliament. I am Sharif, don't like it, rock the Casbah, stop the fatwa. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. I am England, I am England shirt made in Bangladesh. I am Brick Lane, I am Curry House of the year 2005. I am Rogan Josh, I'm so damn lost. I'm so damn lost. I'm so damn lost. Looking for a shape that's home. Looking for a place that's home. Looking for a shape that's home. Looking for a place that's home. Looking for a shape that's home. Looking for a place that's home. Looking for a shape that's home. Looking for a place that's home. Mera juta hai Japani. Home is where your heart is. Ye patloon Inglistani. Home is where your heart lives. Sar pe laal topi Rusi. Nah, home is where your ass fits. Fir bhi dil hai. 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 Looking for a shape that's home. Looking for a place that's home. Looking for a shape that's home. Looking for a place that's home. Fir bhi dil hai. 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 Fir bhi.
Give it up. Sarathy Korwar here at Winter Jazz Fest at the Bowery and Wilkins Sound Lounge on the checkout from WBGO. You know how Thelonious Monk used to get up in the middle of his solos and just start dancing?
Oh yeah.
That's how I feel right now.
Oh, you should do it. You should do it.
Man, you can also hear the blues from West Africa in that composition
Right,
too.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's kind of based on a Qawwali idea. So it's Qawwali music is like Sufi music. It's communal music. It's practiced together in a large bunch of people, group of people. I mean, there's lots of parallels across the world with ritual music, religious music that I love.
And how much entry point have you gotten from like Sufi to Sufi
Well,
traditions?
I listen to a lot of Qawwali music. I love Qawwali. It's very closely related to Indian classical music in many ways. So I kind of came through that angle from playing tabla, from my access to Indian classical music into Qawwali, and then kind of translating that into a more sort of jazz sound, really.
Very cool. And so what is that composition Bowl about?
Bowl, maybe Zia can talk about this. Talk about what Bowl is about.
Yeah, I want isolate some lyrics for us and break it down.
So that's, I guess that poem, that thing that I wrote was just more about just the images and stereotypes that are put onto brown people from all over, and then just sort of having like you were saying before, like being a bit sarcastic with it, but then also the pain in it, but then also then trying to rise from that as well. And then the chorus is from a Faiz Ahmed Faiz poem, which is a Urdu refrain, a couple lines from his poem, which
Yeah, the chorus is called is Bol ke lab azad hai tere, bol zabab tak teri hai. So it means speak because you're still free to speak. So it's kind of also a critique on like democracy and the fact that if you still have one, you gotta speak and make sure that you're heard so that you can save it.
I understand your album art actually comes from a protest movement from the 70s and 80s that, maybe some of you might be familiar with, because I think it was showcased in that new film Blinded by the Light too. That was the same.
Right. I mean, actually, I haven't seen that film, but I mean, it's not really based on any one specific protest movement, but it's looking at lots of like South Asian protests in the UK, but also like what's happening in India right now with a lot of kind of protests abroad, centered around student movements and pro-democracy, like anti-fascist protests that are happening. So it's kind of singularly this idea of people coming together and kind of, although we're also highlighting people's differences and the idea that there is no one singular brown voice, there is this idea of community maybe that can bind everyone together. Also, the idea of the name of the album, More Arriving, is, it's playing on that negative rhetoric of when someone says more arriving, it's automatically kind of considered to be a negative phrase, because it's this idea of people coming to your land and diluting your culture or stealing your jobs. And that's the kind of rhetoric that you get to hear in the media today. And so in a way, I wanted to kind of portray a sea of people coming, and that idea that it might not be such a scary thing after all. But to kind of play on that idea of more arriving. And that's what the album title is.
Very cool. Well, we're going to wrap things up here with the band, and we thank them so much for joining us. Sarathy Korwar and his ensemble featuring Zia Ahmed on vocals, Pawan Benjamin on sax, Al McSween on keys, the leader and drummer. Sarathy, thank you so much. What's the last song you're going to present for us?
The last song we're going to do is the last song on the album. It's called Pravasis. And again, it's kind of self-explanatory, but the last words on the album and on the song are more arriving. And so that kind of felt like a good way to end the record. And
you must not be familiar with what's going on in American politics these days either,
yeah, I have
right?
no idea what's happening. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. Best to stay kind of ignorant, I think. Anyway, this one's called Pravasis. And thanks for having us.
Hey,
Big ups.
my pleasure.
Pravasi, Pravasi, Pravasi. Expat, worker, guest, worker, guest worker, worker, foreigner, worker, non-resident, worker, non-citizens, workers, workers, visa, people, visas, workers, worker, a million more, homeless, visiting, residing, born, brought, arrived, acclimatizing, homesick, lovelorn, giddy, worker, workers, tailor, solderer, chauffeur, maid, oilman, nurse, typist, historian, shopkeeper, truck driver, watchman, gardener, secretary, pilot, smuggler, hooker, T-boy, mistress, temporary, people, illegal, people, ephemeral, people, gone, deported, left, more, arriving.
Yeah, Ahmed. Thank you guys so much. I would like to give a huge shout out to Corey Goldberg on the music mix, Chris Tobin on video, and everybody that is making this fantastic session possible and tuning in worldwide, hopefully. It just is a huge pleasure to be bringing you this series from the Bowers and Wilkins Sound Lounge at Winter Jazz Festival. And coming up next, we got sounds from the Dutch Underground, y'all. Some more jazz and hip hop coming your way. And thank you very much for joining us.